Next up, Beyond Bias, how to become more conscious of the unconscious. Here to talk to you about it, please welcome Anna Stopel, D&I CE Manager and CSR Poland at Sodexo. Good afternoon, Anna.
Good afternoon, Łukasz. Good afternoon, everyone on the call.
Hi, great to have you with us. How are you feeling today? Have you been listening to the preceding talks and debates?
It was very interesting. And all the thoughts they shared with us. It is very dynamic, and I am also impressed by the number of people who attend the festival. It's really, really impressive.
It is impressive indeed, and I think what it says above all is that people care, and they're looking for ways and means to make this debate more important, more relevant in their respective companies. Tell me, in this entire process, what we haven't discussed that much is unconscious bias. We have touched on it in a number of ways, but we have never given it a name, really. What is unconscious bias in the context of our festival?
Yeah, that's true. So let's start from the very beginning to say what is unconscious bias and what is not. So bias is a predisposition to see certain things, events, or people in a positive or negative way. It is a preference or an inclination, attitude, or we can say belief, especially one that inhibits impartial judgment. Unconscious or hidden bias is when we are not aware of our biases, whether they are positive or negative. Bias is quite often identified with a stereotype, but in fact it is not the same. So the difference between bias and stereotype is that bias is a personal preference. It is like or dislike. And stereotypes, which exist and are prevalent in our society, are oversimplified images, a kind of generalizations and statements applied to a whole group of people without regard to the individual. So let me give you an example. The stereotype, for example, only a man could be a good engineer, or only a woman could read poetry. But when I get into the train and look for a place to sit, and in a compartment I can see a man who is reading a book of my favorite author, I will not hesitate to take a seat next to him. It will be my positive bias, my preference. And the very truth is that we all have biases.
Unless you're really shy, then it will be another barrier to sitting next to him.
Yeah.
How is all that? I think we already have the general picture of what we're talking about here in terms of unconscious bias, but could we try and bring it to the level where it's extremely relevant for the way companies operate?
Yeah, as I said, we all have biases. So in fact, biases, unconscious biases, affect very much all decision-making processes in our business. The reasons for disparity, for inequality, are very numerous, but a frequently cited one is unconscious bias. It is, in fact, because it can, as I said, impact our decision-making in many aspects of people management, starting from recruitment, then development, promotion, salary negotiation, and performance management. So let me maybe, I would give you an example from recruitment, which was my area. I led recruitment in my organization for a few years. So in this context, typically we consider gender, race, age as characteristics to be mindful of during the recruitment process. But unconscious bias goes so much further than that. where hiring decision can often, in the end, boil down into gut feeling, surely it is no better euphemism for unconscious bias. Leaders may take some hiring decisions and may undiscriminate because candidates think in different way or at a different pace, which are characteristics relating to neurodiversity. And as I said, it is not exclusive to the recruitment stage because it really influences all aspects of organization decision making.
Actually, what you're saying reminds me of the public speaking training, because unconscious bias plays a huge part in public speaking training, because there is even an alternative saying which goes like this: expectation shapes reality. So the moment people see you, or if they only know something about you, they will instantly start drawing conclusions. For instance, if you even professionally have a very narrow area of specialization, for example, you are an interpreter, people will automatically never think about you as a strategist, for instance, right? Because these things are somehow on an unconscious bias level mutually exclusive. So even job titles have strong unconscious biases attached to them. Is it fair to say that, or am I exaggerating, Anna? Tell me.
No, that's very true, and it is a great example, really.
And that's even why you would find that in big corporate setups, environments, for instance, even a secretary to the CEO would be hesitant to change and modify her title a little so that it's reflective of a more complex set of responsibilities that he or she or whoever is responsible for performing those tasks.
Yeah, that's true, and very often we are so attached to our unconscious bias that they are unconscious. So we take some recruitment decisions. I heard very often these stories that, I don't know, a receptionist could be only a woman under 25 or, this. So we really think too much through these labels we see in the CVs. Yeah.
So actually, it's probably also fair to say, Anna, that unconscious bias is one of the reasons why so many people at individual level find it so hard to understand the challenges and problems that the LGBTQI community is having, because our unconscious biases in those areas as well are so deep-rooted, aren't they? It's not only the question of a language and not having equivalents of names and pronouns for everyone to be perfectly happy with, but it's much more than that. It's obviously there's a cultural background to it, but there's much more than that.
Yeah, of course. Unconscious bias is much more than that, as you said. And all those limits and boundaries are in our head.
Can you give me an example of falling into that trap yourself from your personal, professional background? Have you discovered important truths about your own unconscious bias through falling in a trap and learning something very important from that?
Absolutely. I could give you a lot of examples, but let me
10 minutes, go on.
Okay. One example which was quite really important to me, because it was also connected to this recruitment field. When I was recruiting a person, a new team member, and after some time, and only after some time, I realized that I choose this person because this person was so similar to me, and it has really an impact on my decision. This person was similar to me because of similar temperament, similar point of interest. So it was so safe choice for me.
And why was it a trap? Did this person turn out to be a huge troublemaker?
No, not at all. But in fact, the challenge with unconscious bias is that we often struggle to acknowledge it because we think that we are so objective in our decisions. So it is sometimes it is quite painful to realize that our unconscious can make such an impact on our decisions.
And how does it, because obviously this is difficult to spot in yourself, but possibly easier to spot for the team who is watching this process happening. Does it impact the team when they see that unconscious bias plays a part? For instance, a male senior executive having a weakness for women that he sees as beautiful for whatever reason or whatever definition of beautiful this person has, and would make choices, recruitment choices, accordingly. So how does it impact the team if you have unconscious bias playing an important part of important processes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it can has, of course, an important impact. That's why it is so important to open the floor to this topic, to discuss this topic, because it can really decrease the motivation of the team. If you see that someone was hired or promoted because of not really objective reasons.
Yeah. Hiring and promoting is one part of it, but then I'm afraid the suffering may actually go on. There are bonuses, preferential treatment for persons who are perceived through the prism of this unconscious bias. But from that, I think our next question, the natural next step would be, what can you do about that? I mean, what's the best way to do about that? Because these things are deeply personal. If you tell your boss, hey, what are you doing? What are you basing your decisions on? You will be instantly met with a hostile reaction. So what's the most mature and professional way to handle this?
Mm-hmm. So, in fact, the challenge is the very nature of this unconscious, is what makes this difficult topic, also training topic, because if we are not aware of it, how can we do something about it? It is a kind of blind spot that requires a shift, some major, of course, but because it requires a shift in how we think about other people that we perceive as to be different from us. The challenge is that if we are unaware of its influence, and we, as I said, we often struggle to acknowledge, to admit it, because sometimes it is totally in conflict with the conscious values by which we choose to live. So first of all,
Anna, but I'm sure you will agree. I'm sure you will agree we should not leave those leaders to deal with it themselves, because that's hopeless, isn't it? So what's the best way to act, and how to have a structured response? Should you go for an external consultancy, and do you even have the power, because consultancies will charge you for a process like that? So how do you act? What do you do?
Mm-hmm. So first of all, we need to raise awareness through training. But of course, it needs to be regular and ongoing. Awareness training is beneficial because it's open up a dialogue, and I think it could be a good start. But as you said, it needs to lead to necessary changes in systems, in procedures, and policies. And these can be tools which will help managers, which will help leaders to challenge their own biases. So important is to organize. Yeah.
The not so funny thing about being a leader in an organization, especially one with lots and lots of unconscious biases is that as they climb hierarchies of companies, they have excellent defensive skills. And I would imagine that just taking it for granted that all of them are unconscious of their unconscious biases is extremely naive, isn't it? I would imagine that some of them consider it to be part of their power portfolio, if we can call it that way. They are deliberate about it in some ways. They know they have those weaknesses. They consider it part of the color of their leadership in the positive sense of the word. Do you think it's the case, or am I sort of imagining too much here?
It may be a case. I think I am really fortunate because I work for a company where the culture is so open that we can discuss it, even with really senior leaders, top management, and where in the matrix organization we have these possibilities to really involve HR or L&D to operational strategy and operational processes, that they can give some objective possibility to think, to help leaders in their decision making.
Anna, last but not least, can we close with me asking you for, let's say, 3 recommendations for tackling unconscious bias in an organization?
Of course. So first of all, we need to admit we all have biases and many of them are unconscious. Dealing with them is making the unconscious conscious. So open this topic and then open this box in our head. I don't know. I need to check and seek out regular feedback on your own behaviors, on your actions from trusted colleagues.
And once you open this box in your head, be careful not to open a Pandora's box on the way. That would be, I suppose, our advice. Anna Stopel, D&I CE Manager and CSR Poland, Sodexo. Thank you very much, Anna, for finding the time to talk to us.
It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure. Thank you. Bye-bye.